Welcome to today's overview. We are jumping straight into an urgent and deeply intellectual exploration of what is arguably the most pivotal event in all of human history. We're unpacking an incredibly rich study from the icomm.CLASSROOM Teaching Ministry USA, facilitated by Chief Learning Officer Ndu. Today we're looking at Luke 24, but we're not just looking at the resurrection's empty tomb as a nice, comforting story. No, we're looking at it as cold, hard evidence. So let's dive right into this and see how a first-century empty tomb establishes the ultimate trajectory of faith.
We really have to start by acknowledging the heavy emotional weight of this scene. Just imagine the sheer, absolute devastation. Jesus has been executed. The followers are completely scattered. Yet, as community members Nijid, Stephanie, and Io so brilliantly pointed out during the session, the deep, paralyzing trauma of these women was met with this unwavering act of loyalty. Think about it. They had absolutely no idea how they were going to roll that massive stone away. They were running on nothing but grief and raw gratitude, simply planning to honor a body. Their loyalty literally pushed right through their trauma.
And what they actually found? Well, it changes everything. This brings us right to Chief Learning Officer Ndu's core opening thesis for this study. The orderly state of the empty tomb they walked into serves as undeniable legal and historical evidence. It wasn't some chaotic scene of a grave robbery. It was a scene of calculated peace, which leads us directly into a forensic breakdown of the evidence. Part 1. The Forensic Opening. The Anatomy of an Empty Tomb.
So, when we look at the anatomy of this empty tomb alongside the account in John 20, we see this fascinating juxtaposition of two very powerful insights. Over on the left, we've got Bill's forensic observation. He noted that the text specifically mentions the facecloth was folded up in a place by itself, and that brilliantly challenges the whole single linen shroud of Turin theory. Then, on the right side, Ndu locks in the legal proof. Let's be real. Hurried tomb thieves simply do not take the time to cleanly fold burial clothes, right? A ransacked tomb is messy. This orderly crime scene proves the body was not stolen. It was vacated.
Part 2. The Theological Pivot. Spiritual Amnesia.
You know, the physical evidence was right there in front of the disciples, but the women's testimony sounded like pure nonsense to them. Why is that? Well, Nid offered a really profound critique here. Sudden grief, profound shock, and broken expectations actually cause a functional blindness to God's presence. When our minds are totally locked onto the disaster sitting right in front of us, we forget the promises we've already been given. The disciples had the prophecy of the third day, but trauma just erased it. Amnesia in this context is the absolute destroyer of faith.
So, the absolutely crucial question is, how do we fight this functional blindness? Community member Bill offered a highly practical solution for us, a systematic remembrance journal. Because the discipline of remembering is the discipline of believing. By actively recording past blessings and then actually reviewing them during your present crises, you effectively build a psychological and spiritual shield against your current doubts.
And this realization brings an entirely new dimension to what day this all actually happened on. Community member Kibra injected this profoundly beautiful linguistic insight into the study. In the ancient Ethiopian language, the word for Sunday, Ehud, literally translates to the beginning or the first. I mean, wow. This beautifully showcases how the resurrection didn't just happen on a historical timeline. It structurally redefined the language of time itself, launching an entirely new creation.
Part 3. The Sabbath Controversy. Historical Calendars and Authentic Community Tension.
Now, that shift to Sunday, it sparks a fascinating, highly unfiltered community debate. On one side, Ndu and Paul read scriptures like Acts 20 and 1 Corinthians 16 as evidence that the early church established a brand new weekly mandate to meet and give on the first day to honor the resurrection. But on the flip side, Monita provides this brilliant historical pushback. She argues that these first-day meetings were actually tied to the existing Jewish feast cycles, like the Feast of First Fruits, and were not necessarily a departure from the Mosaic Sabbath at all.
Weaving right into this, Christian added a striking contribution, noting that for some Messianic Jews today, shifting the Sabbaths to Sunday is actually viewed as an explicit sin. And you know, what's so incredible about this dialogue is that it shows a learning community that values deep, rigorous, unfiltered scriptural analysis over easy, comfortable answers. We aren't here to pick sides. We present the textual evidence, and the tension remains as an invitation for all of us to dig deeper.
Part 4. The Emmaus Road Clincher, From Panic to Peace.
Moving into the visceral reality of Christ's appearances, Jesus meets two disciples on the road to Emmaus. They're walking in deep skepticism and completely shattered expectations, literally saying, "We had hoped." But Jesus doesn't just coddle their grief, right? Instead, he gives them an absolute masterclass in theology. He uses all of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms to show that all of history is basically an arrow pointing directly to the Messiah's necessary suffering and glory.
But listen, theology wasn't enough. They needed physical proof. Andrew details this final framework of evidence. When Jesus appears in the locked upper room, the disciples are terrified, genuinely thinking they're seeing a ghost. So Jesus offers what we can call the upper room bodily scan. Touch me and see. Then he provides the ultimate metabolic proof. He actually asks for broiled fish and eats it right in front of them to completely shatter their panic.
Because, as Ndu emphasized, a ghost does not have flesh, it doesn't have bones, and it definitely does not have the metabolic ability to chew and digest food. The sheer physical reality of those scars on his hands is the ultimate counter to the disciples' grief-induced superstition. He wasn't some floating spirit, he was a physical, breathing, resurrected reality bringing peace into their locked room.
But the most beautiful pivot in this whole account happens right here. During the Emmaus Road encounter, the culminating moment isn't actually when Jesus is talking. It's when he sits at the table, takes the bread, blesses it, and breaks it. In that precise moment, physical sight vanishes, but true, burning spiritual insight ignites. Their eyes were finally open to the living presence that had literally been walking with them the entire time.
Which brings us to a striking, direct, pastoral challenge from this study. We've looked at the forensic evidence, the history, the community debates, and the scripture. But right now, for you, what draft of defeat have you written about your own life? Where have broken expectations or trauma allowed spiritual amnesia to completely blind you to the living presence walking right beside you? The empty tomb isn't just some dusty event from the first century. It is an urgent invitation for you today to let peace shatter your panic. Keep studying, keep questioning, and above all, keep remembering.